Hello and welcome to Reach and Reflect, a podcast where we interview guests from both traditional and alternative life paths, with the aim of figuring out, for the benefit of our audience, where they find fulfillment and meaning. In her own words, at 25 years old, Maite Kuyasin is an artist, poet, and muse in full pursuit of the truth of the soul. In this episode, her daringly raw authenticity is a breath of fresh air in a world of highlight reels and fake media personalities. She believes that those that free themselves free others. Not one to mince words, prepare to get esoteric and woo as we delve into her perspectives on the metastructure of the universe itself as revealed by her tumultuous yet surprisingly uplifting story. We did our best to delve into the lowlights in order to provide actionable advice for anyone who should find themselves in similar situations. As always, we ask that our audience check in with how well this guest resonates with you. Resonance may be a sign that your path and purpose is along the same lines as our guests. Thank you. And if you enjoy this episode, please leave a rating or review. Maite.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Feel really excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. You're someone I've been looking forward to interviewing for a long time, given your trajectory and where you're at. But before diving into that, I want to give an introduction of what this is to you and everyone else. So Reach and Reflect is designed to give people a map of life. We're going to interview people who have achieved a respectable position in whatever their domain of choosing was, whether it's, a traditional job or something alternative, or like you, a musician, and really dive into the questions that we're all struggling to answer, but not really talking about, like, where do you find meaning and, like, when do you feel fulfilled? We're going to do so by going through your life story. We'll do a little biopic in the beginning. We'll talk about the highs, the lows especially, and how you got out of those lows, just to give people like a real picture of what it's like to, be you and live life. We're trying to get away from the highlight reel norm that we see online and the manufactured personalities we see on traditional media like television, and give people a real dose of humanity, all with the goal of helping people out.
Amazing.
To that end, we invite our viewers to use Reach and Reflect as a toolkit, to use all of our guests as landmarks on a map, and from there decide where they want to head with their lives. So, without further ado, our guest today is Maite. How do you pronounce your last name?
Kuyasin. Maite Kuyasin.
And could you give us just like a quick bio, like, how old are you? Where are you from?
Yes. So I am this year 25 years old. I will be 26 in a couple of months. I was born in Tahiti, French Polynesia. And then when I was 5, my whole family moved to this little island area in British Columbia called Powell River. That's where they are right now. Then when I was 13, I moved to the Bay Area, California. And kind of just never left. I fell in love with it and didn't want to leave.
Amazing.
Yeah.
This place has a magic like that.
It does.
And we'll dive more deeply into that story in just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But before we do, I just want to set the stage and make a quick ask of you to, as we go through these questions, try to do your best to paint a picture for our viewers. I find stories are the best form for people to remember things in. That's why we can all remember fairy tales, but not necessarily what happened in 1654 in wherever.
Oh, I know exactly what happened in 1654.
So yeah. Then let's go ahead and get started. Can you just tell me like where you are currently in life? Like, what are you doing? Where are you at? Where are you headed?
Where am I at currently in life? What's alive for me right now is this transition into a lot of planting seeds and a lot of undoing. And I mean undoing in a way of like the patterns and beliefs and thought systems that I've carried my whole entire life. I've spent a lot of time undoing. And so now I'm in this state that's like a little bit raw as I now reevaluate what is true for me and what does feel good and what am I here to do and who am I really. And so stepping into that space and embodying more of that. And so that's really what's alive for me right now, is this like stage of a lot of curiosity, in observing and witnessing where my life is going, where my life has been, who I get to become and who I get to be. And so that's like kind of it on a more meta level. And then on a more micro level, I'll be going to Costa Rica next week for Envision Festival. And my life is one where it asks for a lot of acute presence on my part. And so I don't know what I'm doing after Envision Festival. I have like tentative dates, like at the end of March. I know that I'll be co-leading a women's retreat. And then I know that in July, I'll be performing at a really cool event that I'm not going to speak too much on because I haven't actually asked for permission to talk about that yet. But things like that. And so my life is very like ebb and flow. It's very like what's really live for me right now, surrendered to the moment, and then kind of going in the direction of like I cannot see that far ahead of me, just like 3 steps ahead and moving in that direction, and then switching and moving in and, you know, to the right and then to the left. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at.
That is wild. And, you know, exactly why I wanted to have you on as well. Because you're in what I would consider a very courageous position. And to be in the present so often or at such frequency is generally very rare for where we live and what people do on a day-to-day basis. And so before I you know, dive into your backstory a bit more, and please keep me honest here, like, would it be accurate to say that you're a musician right now?
Yeah. I feel resistance to that because when I think of musician, I think of someone who like can get up and just like start jamming with the best of them. And that's what I think of when I think of a musician. It's interesting. Thank you for kind of bringing that up because you're right that's a big part of my life too. Writing music. And I would say I'm an artist in the sense that like I can't just like pick up an instrument and like I don't know music theory very well. And so for me, I'm like, no, I don't really consider myself a musician. But if you ask the people around me who come to my shows, who listen to me sing, who listen to me perform, they're like, of course you're a musician. So I have some resistance to that a little bit. But yes, music is a really big part of my life. I am a musician.
Musical artist.
I'm a musical artist. There we go. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, great. I think that set the stage pretty well. And so we'll get back into, you know, kind of what that means. But, you know, since that's I always find it's useful to kind of go into like the how did we get here bit. So that's what we're going to do next.
Cool.
So yeah, origin story time. Could you, you know, tell me about your childhood? Like, you know, what was your younger years life or your younger years like? And what was family life like?
Okay. So my childhood, I'm just going to keep it super raw.
Please.
I'm really honest with you. My childhood, I am now coming to terms with the fact that it was a bit traumatic. And I'm putting the word a bit in there because I am sugarcoating it, but also being conscientious of the fact that compared to a lot of other lives, like it really, there are more traumatic scenarios that could have happened. But for the purpose of like my own story and my own experience of it, it was difficult. I was born in Tahiti. My biological father passed away when I was 6 months old. And then my mom was not prepared to take care of me. So really neither one of my parents were prepared to take care of me. And so she left me in the care of her aunt and uncle. And I lived with them for the first few years of my life. And like, if, you know, I'm sure that, you know, the first few years of your life are really foundational. They kind of set the stage for the rest of your life from when you're born to the age of 7. Like that's when all of your belief systems get solidified. And I happen to have no memory from before the age of 7.
Whoa.
So I don't know what beliefs were instilled in me. I don't know why I am the way I am. There is no way for me to be like, oh, well, when I was 4 years old, this happened. because I have no recollection. I don't remember what it was like to live in Tahiti. I don't remember moving to Canada. The earliest memory I have is from when I was 7. We gifted 3 younger brothers, and the 3 of us, or the 4 of us, kind of like created a life for ourselves and like created a whole world of like mystery and fantasy, and that we would like play with each other. We had each other. So when I was in Tahiti, my brother was born in Tahiti too, and then so the 2 of us moved to Canada, and then we had our 3rd brother, my 2nd brother, and so yeah, it was kind of like the 3 of us who were having a difficult time transitioning. And then the 4th brother, or my 3rd brother, came along later. But yeah, we had each other, and so I feel super grateful that I had them. So growing up, I definitely suppressed all of my anger and all of my sadness and all of my shame too. I was like really suppressing that, like did not want to feel that. And what that meant was, of course, those emotions, because they're so rooted deep down and they're actually seeking to be healed, they would manifest in really inappropriate ways. So I was a bully. I would act out a lot. Like I was a kleptomaniac. So I would steal like crazy. I would lie all the time. I would get in trouble all the time at school. But really, these were all just cries for help. They were all cries for love. But obviously, fighting fire with fire. So I would be like angry, and then that would anger my parents, and then we would just combust, and it would be scary and terrible. So there was a lot of suppression going on in my childhood, and a lot of like me not knowing who I was, and a lot of me like covering up my truth, which is that I was actually deeply sad and really angry that I was uprooted from my life and then brought to this new country where I had to learn how to be somebody completely different. And I seriously made up the most absurd stories. Like in high school and in college, I told people that my dad was the CEO of Dasani water, because I didn't want to admit that he wasn't like some wealthy guy. I didn't want to admit that my family was like, middle class. And that's like an easy Google search. You could Google who's the CEO of Dasani. And I was just like fearless in my lies, just didn't even flinch about them. And I was really quick on my feet. So when someone would be like, it says here that the CEO of Dasani is, so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. And I would be so quick. I'd be like, yeah, my dad has a pseudonym so that like we don't get bombarded.
Wow.
Absurd things. And it got to a point where it really caught up to me. And I just got exhausted. I was like, holy crap, I don't think I can keep up these lies anymore. Like, I don't think I can keep up this like false image of myself anymore. I was in college and I experienced deep depression, and I was deeply depressed because I wasn't being honest with anybody, let alone myself. And so I was working in advertising at the time. I was an art director. I was actually really good at what I did. Studying advertising and working at an agency, but just being so sad and so depressed. And at this point, I had like created such a false image of myself that I didn't feel like it was okay for me to turn around and be like, hey, everyone, none of this is true. Sorry that I lied. It was just like, I chose to keep it up instead. And I was like, I've already come this far. Like, I can't turn around now. I'm just going to keep going with it. Wasn't honest with my family, wasn't honest with my boyfriend at the time. Like, my boyfriend even thought that my dad was like some high level CEO. We did it for 3 years.
Wow. You were good at that.
I was so good at that, painfully good at that. Like, I couldn't sleep at night. And this is also then when like my body was starting to shut down. So I was experiencing enormous physical pain that I would see doctors for. Like, I was seeing spine specialists for this. I was seeing acupuncturists, body workers. What are they called when they crack your back?
Chiropractors?
Chiropractors, thank you. Nobody knew what was happening. And it wasn't until like I got really real with myself that I later realized it was an emotional pain, that I was carrying anger in my back, turns out. And so that's a whole journey in of itself of healing myself from that. But there was this year of my life, 2016, I remember it, because I call it my Murph year, my Murphy's Law year, where everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And it was basically the year where everything that I lied about and everything that I ever did that went against my truth looked me in the face and said, like, you got to face this. It was the year that that was the year that my back was the most in the most pain, and so I was taking ibuprofen every day for a year, because I couldn't walk to class and back without feeling pain in my back. That was when, like, it was in college, so I had been like smoking marijuana before, but this year it was like, no, I am now smoking marijuana to continue to suppress these emotions, because at this point, like, lying about it isn't doing it. Like, now I know I'm lying about it, and now I know that, like, I was like believing my own bullshit. And it got to a point where it was like, oh no, this is for real, and I have no other way of dealing with it other than to smoke so that I can numb my emotions.
Yeah.
So 2016 was the year of, like, it was so difficult. I was like deep in my darkness, and my family, like, that was the year my family said, you can't be a part of this family anymore. There was some family members who were just like so disappointed, and some of them who were just like, were so far out of my, who were so far removed that they didn't even know what to do. And that year, summer of 2016, I'm on my way to get ibuprofen. And right before I leave, I, of course, was like, let me just take a bong rip first so I can, like, handle what I'm feeling. So I took a bong rip, got in the car. My boyfriend was with me. And then we're driving. It's like a 5-minute drive. And behind me, I see police lights going off. And so I pulled over, and the guy's like, your license plate's expired. And then he, like, kind of lingers for a bit, and he asks me, it smells like smoke in here. Have you been smoking tonight? And I looked at him, and I thought to myself, for the first time in my life, I'm going to be honest. For the first time in my life, I'm going to tell the truth. So I looked at him, and I was like, yeah, actually, I have been. I smoked about an hour ago. And next thing I know, I'm in the back of a cop car. I'm cuffed, and he's bringing me to jail, and I'm spending the night in jail. And, like, I'm in this room, and it's tight in there, and there's somebody laying on a mat at my feet, and at my head is a toilet. And I was just like, this cannot be my life. That was like my breaking point right then and there. It was just like, I cannot believe what's happening to me right now. Like, I have everything laid out for me. I went to a college prep high school, like one of the best in the country. I went to this college. I studied in, like, one of the best advertising schools in the country. You know, I'm in, like, the top sorority on campus. Like, everything is laid out for me. How is it possible that I'm currently in jail? And it was really difficult. And that it was like right then and there that I really started to feel my sadness. And I got home, you know, the next day, and I remember just like weeping. I was weeping, and my boyfriend was trying to comfort me, and I just kept saying over and over again, I feel so alone. I feel so alone. And it was really hard because he was like, I'm here. And I was like, I feel so alone. And I understand it now as, like, of course I feel alone. Like, nobody knows who I am. I don't know who I am. I feel alone even when you're here because you don't actually know who I am, you know? And it was at the end of that year, I go home for Christmas, and I'm at Christmas Mass. And mind you, the rest of that summer and the rest of that fall I was deep in my depression. I didn't want to be here anymore. I was like, there's no point in me being here. And I thought about all the different ways that I could off myself. And the only reason I didn't was because of my brothers. And so at the end of that year, I'm at home in Christmas Mass, and I was on my knees, and I said the most sincere prayer I've ever said in my life. And that was to give me something to believe in. And I was like, dear God, you know, if I don't know what I'm doing here, but if I'm, like, supposed to be a nun, I will do that. If you want me to be in a cloister, I will do that. I literally did not care. I just didn't want to feel the way that I was feeling. And I was so sincere in my prayer, and I was crying, and it was a whole situation. And then at the end of the prayer, I said, if there's something else I should believe in, also give me a sign. And then I went back to Colorado, and my boyfriend had booked us a trip to go, snowmobiling. And the woman who was shuttling us from the hotel to the spot started like talking about the law of attraction and how we create our own realities, and how she could like talk to animals and all this stuff. And I was like, girl, I don't believe that we create our own realities, because if we did, why would I create this for myself? I really don't believe that. Like, I don't think that that's true. And she was kind of like laughing along, and I was really curious. I really wanted to know. And like, what do you mean you can talk to animals? And like, she was telling me how she'd like been a truck driver. She's been a dumpster driver. She's like ridden in an RV. Like, that was her life. She was like, I'm so happy. And here I am, like, how is it that this lady who drives garbage trucks and enjoys it is enjoying her life more than me, who has it all? I have it all figured. Like, everything is handed to me. Like, it's all so easy. And how am I so unhappy? And you drive a dump truck and you're stoked on it. And so I was really curious. And right before she drops us off, she turns around, looks at my boyfriend, and she said, thank you for letting us have this conversation. I know that this all sounds crazy to you. I know that you really don't want to be having this conversation. So thank you. And she said, but she needed to hear this. And she looks at me dead in the eye and says, the universe is always for you, never against you. And that was my first key, my very first key. And I became obsessed with that. And after that is when I like started to look at the books, and I was reading the books, and I was, watching the videos and the YouTube talks and the TED talks, and like getting into all the esoteric things. And I was just like, what does it mean to be the creator of your own reality? What does she mean when she says the universe is always for me? How did she learn how to talk to animals? Like, what? That's when I like really started to like look at my life and be like, how did I actually get here? And, I was supposed to start at this agency in San Francisco. I was going to move from Boulder back to California and start at this advertising agency here. And I remember I was on the flight. My friend gifted me a book. It was You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero, which was my first like, this is everything I've been looking for. I read it in one go on the airplane from Colorado back to San Francisco. And I literally landed, sent them an email. I was supposed to start 2 days later. I sent them an email and I was like, I'm not coming. Like, this isn't me. I'm sorry. I don't actually belong here, and this position should go to someone who actually really wants to be here. And I remember like having to tell my family that, who like everything was riding on this. Basically, it was like, this is what I studied for. This is what I came here to do. And I just like dropped it. And I was like, I don't know. Something inside me like tells me I really shouldn't be doing this. And so I'm like doing all this studying and of my own like personal journey. And I like moved in with my aunt, and I started working at a clothing boutique. And it was at that clothing boutique, I liked the freedom of it, because then I got to like read and do the other things that I wanted to do. And it was at this boutique that like women would come in, and I'd noticed like, whoa, you're all buying clothes, but you're not feeling good about it. You keep coming back every week. And like it's like a really quick high, it's like, I feel so good in this. And then the next week it's like, oh my God, I need something to make me feel good. And that was good for me too. I was like, I don't think happiness comes from outside of us. So that like brings me down another like rabbit hole of like, what is happiness, and like, what is joy, and like, what does it mean to like love yourself? And, and then I eventually moved to San Francisco, and that was in 2018. I moved in with 3 other people, and in that house was cool and all, but like there was still drinking going on, still the smoking, but it was cool. It was like what I needed to get introduced to the San Francisco scene, where I met like my mentor and my meditation teachers, and like started working at this tea house called The Center that's in San Francisco that's really special, and started meeting people who this and that. And then like what happened was I moved into my own apartment. And that was in 2018. I moved into my own apartment with a 1 bedroom, and I've never lived alone in my life. And I'm in this apartment that's like perfect. I had manifested. It was the first thing that I was like, holy shit, I literally manifested exactly what I asked for, except for it's 10 times better than what I asked for. And it was the incubator that I needed for my growth. It was like, I first of all could design it exactly how I wanted. I couldn't believe it. The freedom I felt from being able to like express myself based on what I thought I loved and not what I thought somebody wanted me to love. It was like, no, I get to do this for myself. And like every morning I would wake up and meditate and stretch and read and listen to podcasts. And I became totally obsessed, like way obsessed with it. It took me 1 year, that year in that apartment in San Francisco, to completely change my life around. Totally. Gave up drinking, gave up meat, gave up marijuana. That took a while, but I gave it up eventually. You know, and then my mentor invited me to sit with plant medicine, ayahuasca. And I was like, yes, of course, if it helps me to know myself better, I'll totally do that. And then the day of, I got an intuitive hit not to do that. And so I called her and I was like, I'm actually not going to come. And she was like, okay, like listen to that. And then 6 months later, I'm like starting to feel the call, like to go down to the jungle. And you know this part, but I go down to I feel it's called to go to the jungle, and so I started talking to people about it, and everyone's like, it's dangerous to travel by yourself as a woman, like, and other people were like, you're going there for ayahuasca. And I was like, no, I'm not. There's no way I'm trying that. I watched the documentaries. That shit's scary. There's no way. And mind you, in those 6 months, like a lot had happened. Like that's when I did like the most amount of shadow work, like really got into my childhood, really got into the roots of my shame and my pain and my anger and my sorrow, really felt that. So it's like February at this point, and a woman comes into the tea house and she starts talking about how she traveled to the Amazon. And so I asked to have tea with her, and we ended up having a conversation that lasted for hours. And in that amount of time, she changed my mind about ayahuasca. She told me about her healing journey with it, and I was like, okay, I actually think I do want to do this, because I was really scared, but I was like, no, I think I want to do this. And so a month later, it's March of 2019, and I find myself in Peru, sitting amongst other people, you know, there's shaman present. There are people from all over the world there. We're all here to do healing work. And there's 4 ceremonies. And by the 4th ceremony, I had gone in there totally open, was so ready, and was just like, you tell me what to do. Like, how do I serve? How do I be of service? What is my purpose? And by the 4th ceremony, I had learned the gift of my voice. And I had learned the power of music. And she told me after an experience, she said, know the medicine of your own music. And then she said and I was like, how do I serve? And she was like, medicine music. So I came back and I started sharing my music, and 9 months later, here we are. I have an album coming out. And the 7 songs on the album are totally inspired by this entire journey that I've been on. These 7 songs are the songs that are the most healing for me, that I'm like super excited to share with other people too. And, you know, in doing the shows that I've done and seeing people totally receive it and heal and feel super connected to like the divine has been so rewarding. It makes all of that inner work so worth it. And that's what I show up to every day. Every day, my question is, how can I be better today than I was yesterday? Every day. Some days I do a phenomenal job. Some days not so great. But I'm now in like such devotion to that higher power because of the fact that it changed my life around completely. I now am like stepping into my authentic truth and like knowing what my voice is, knowing what my power is, knowing what my strength is, knowing what love is, knowing how to like speak honestly and be in integrity with what's true for me. And I'm, you know, based on what's reflected back to me, I can see the quality of my inner work reflected back to me and what people say to me, you know, and like the music The music totally blows my mind. Putting on shows is such a pleasure for me because I am listening to the same thing that the audience is listening to. And so I'm receiving the healing as well. It's just as powerful for me as it is for anybody else in the room. And I love it. I love seeing people be moved by music. Spirit is always talking to us, but music is one of the ways that spirit can speak and know that people will listen. We're so easily moved by sound and by music. And so it feels to me like rather than like sitting down with someone and be like, you are divine, you are perfect, you are so loved, you are so needed. Like I can just sing it. And all of a sudden, if I sing it, people are like, oh, I'm so divine, I'm so perfect, I'm so needed. It's just like, okay, cool. Like my work here is done, you know? So that's brought me to where I am today. Just like totally devoted to being the most expanded expression of myself, and totally devoted to knowing my highest potential and to being that and to being of service to everybody else who wants that too, to being of service to the grand awakening that is bound to happen in the collective consciousness, and being of service at the same time to myself and being like, what keeps me small? Looking at that, letting that go. Where am I hiding? Looking at that, stepping out of that. What are my pains? What are my wounds? And then just like continuously letting that go. And I'm learning that it's not just me. It's also for my ancestors, my lineage, my parents, my family, my community. Like once you start doing the work, like you're doing the work. When it becomes a point though where it's like, I love doing it. It's such an honor to do it because soon we'll all be able to feel that unifying power of love. And that's where I keep my focus. That's what I keep my vision on, is this unified world, this unified community. As cheesy as that sounds, I just know it to be true of this new earth now, of the collective binding together and coming together into love. And that's what I stand for now. And there's no way that I would ever turn back. There's this quote, and it's, you don't see color and then go back to black and white.
True that.
Yeah. And so that's where I'm at, just being like, ooh, more color, more magic. Like, what else is possible? Seriously, what else is possible? I've seen some weird, wacky, out there things and met the most incredible people. And like, if you had told me I would be where I am today, like that lady who was all like, I can talk to animals. I'm like, hey girl, like connecting with her on like an astral level, being like, thank you for that one time, you know, and being like, guess like the animals that I speak with on a daily basis, I've become the wacky lady, you know, like, cool, this is my life now. So that's like a long-winded river through the journey of my life, but that's...
No, that was perfect. And like, wow. So there are some things I'd known about you and other things that were new to me. And first of all, like, thank you for sharing that. That was incredibly powerful, and what a journey it was. And you actually hit like all of the questions basically I had lined up naturally. So like, great. So yeah, viewers, just re-listen to that if you need to, but yeah, she hit everything. So there are a bunch of concepts in there that I'm not so sure everybody who is like listening or viewing might be familiar with, that I think are really worth diving into, because they sound like they definitely have been like hugely transformational to you. And part of the idea of this podcast is to like give people tools and, you know, with which to transform themselves and reach their highest potential. And one of the big ones that you touched on was shadow work. So if you could do like explain, like I'm 5 and like I have no idea what that is, like how would you explain shadow work?
Ooh, good question. So so let's say you're 5 years old. When you're not feeling very good and you're feeling unhappy, or you're feeling sadness, or you're just feeling an emotion that doesn't feel very good, that emotion we can describe as your shadow. And what shadow work is instead of ignoring your shadow, you're actually going to make friends with it. And you're going to go and look at it, and you're going to spend time with it. And you'll say, let's say the emotion you're feeling is anger. So you'll sit with your anger and you'll ask it questions. Why are you angry? Where does this come from? How old were you when this started? What were you doing? Where do you live in my body? And that's getting like a little bit, what is the purpose of you being here? You know, the whole point of shadow work is to understand what this is here to teach you, because it's all meant to help us to let go of what we're not, and it's all meant to like help us release resistance, and to, you know, the illusion that we have of not being good enough, of not being loved, of being separate from everyone else. Like when we look at the anger will teach us something. So that's what shadow work is. It's looking at it and asking it, what are you here to teach me?
So going towards it instead of away like we usually do.
Yeah.
That's powerful stuff. Yeah. And we actually have a section coming up later on kind of like self-building that will dive more deeply into that. But I hope that gives some people a foundation with which to dive into the next part. So yeah, again, I'm still reeling at that whole story. That's absolutely incredible. You know, from your kind of like aha moment in jail, no less, right? Like I actually had one of my best friends had a similar moment also in jail, when he realized things that were most important to him. So hoping that maybe that won't have to happen to other people in order to do that. But I'm seeing a pattern here.
It is a good tool for awakening, but not encouraging it. There are ways to get there sooner.
Yeah. And before we talk about those ways, I'd like to do a little bit of like looking back. And so like it's fittingly the year is now 2020, the year of hindsight and perfect vision. So I'd like to ask you, if you had to do it all over again, what would you change?
Well, okay, if we're going to entertain the idea that I would want to change anything, because I ultimately believe that it's all great and it's all like meant to be, and if anything was different, I would be a completely different person today. However, fiddling with the idea of it, if I could change anything, I would absolutely have been myself. I would have been more honest. I would have been more me. I wouldn't have hid away. I would have just been myself. Been more truthful. Yeah.
And yeah, and diving into the first way you answer that question is, do you think you would have ended up how you are now without that, you know, past of hiding yourself?
Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine where I would be if I had started this a little bit sooner. I honestly have no idea. I imagine that I would probably be levitating in the Himalayas or something.
I could see that. I could see that too. Yeah. Fair enough, you know. And then similarly about your current situation, like if I gave you a magic wand, is there anything that you would change?
Oh, if I had a magic wand right now, I would totally melt all of my resistance, all of it. Just snap it, be gone, be gone. And I would let go of all of my doubts, all of my fears, all of my disbeliefs.
Now, why would you do that?
Well, because then I would be serving my divine purpose without questioning whether or not I'm worthy of it, whether or not I'm good enough of it. I would be in my highest potential and my highest expansion, and I would have no qualms about it. I would just be doing it, and I would be in total bliss, knowing that everything is perfect as it is and accepting the fact that all is well.
That's an interesting, well, I guess, state for people to ponder upon existing. For those who haven't had anything like that happen, yeah, anyway, that's a possibility for sure. I would then ask, like, myself, I'm curious, do you think that the resistance or these fears or doubts serve a purpose? And would getting rid of them get rid of something that is integral to your journey?
Yeah, good question, actually. The resistance to me, it's funny because I just watched Star Wars, so I have like a whole different meaning attached to the word, the resistance. But anyways, the resistance to me is teaching me, okay, it's like a bit of an esoteric bone here, but I have this belief that we came into this world to experience our divinity, our infinite power, and to be new to it. So the resistance helps me to create a veil of illusion between who I think I am and who I actually am, which is infinite potential. That's your truth as well. You are infinite potential, and you are an infinite, beautiful, divine being. But the resistance, that veil of illusion, helps us believe that we're not. And so it keeps the game going, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're like, oh, none of that's real, then you would like be Christ consciousness, and you'd be able to walk on water. Because you would have no doubts. There's this quote in the Bible that they say, if you had the faith of a mustard seed, you could move mountains. The faith of a mustard seed, you could move mountains. I think I have faith, but I'm not seeing any mountains moving.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So yeah, I think that resistance definitely serves a purpose of helping us to rediscover ourselves.
Mm-hmm. That checks out to me. Like I've done a lot of thinking on that too, and that feels to me like it's part of it. Otherwise you'd be done.
Yeah, you'd be like, cool, I serve my purpose here, like peace. You'd be Buddha.
Right, exactly. Maybe come back once in a while to teach some people some things, but done. So there was also a lot of esotericism, is that the way to say it, in there. And for people who are, watching this or listening to this and who aren't deep into that stuff, how would you begin introducing someone to the concept of their own, divinity and the power that they have within them? If you were to give them a message, maybe you could even sing it. Just kidding.
Well, let me pull out my guitar and just show you track number 3. Well, actually, I think that in saying that, you actually probably just answered the question, and it would be through song. Because if I were to, again, sit here and be like, you are an infinite divine being, like that doesn't really land. I mean,
maybe we could just point them to the album then.
Yeah, it would probably be just like listen to the album, and there's this like deep trust on my end that comes in knowing that the seed inside of you that's awakening. If you're listening to this podcast, like that seed is inside of you and it's awakening, and it's like now calling for expansion, and so it's like you're gonna get what you need. Like, so the album is like filled with, if I say so myself, gems. And I can say that because like these songs were gifted to me from a higher power.
I'd say so too.
Yeah, and thank you. And they're total medicine for me. Like I have to listen to the songs to be reminded. I forget all the time. I'll like wake up, have a great meditation, and by lunchtime I totally forget. And so like they serve as reminders. That's all that it really is. It's all these like little reminders. And so like that woman who drove the shuttle who told me the universe is always for you, never against you. She's reminding me of this truth. And so, how would I like help someone? I think I would just do what I'm doing, which is to just like be an example of what happens when we choose to believe in better. And just like, yeah, like you already said it, listen to the album, listen to the songs, and that knowing that like there will be some lines that stand out to you more. And then you'll listen to the song again months later and a different line will stand out to you more. It just kind of depends on where you're at in your journey and like what resonates with you and what doesn't. But really it would just be to like trust that you're here for a divine purpose, and trust that if you take the time to get to know yourself, you'll find what you need. I think it really comes down to that. Like if you take the time and you put in the effort and you put in the energy, you'll get there.
Well put. And we'll have, links to your album plastered all over the place. Cool. So everyone just, look for it wherever. You'll find it.
It will find you.
That's what happened with me and your music. So, I think this would be kind of a funny way to introduce the backstory of how I first came across your music, because it is truly so magical and inspirational that the 30-ish people who were dancing at a party that I was DJing all left the room. And I got really self-conscious for a minute. I was like, did I start sucking? Like, what the hell's going on? Where are the people? So I paused the music and I go room to room and I can't find anyone in the first 3 rooms I look in. And then the last door I open barely a foot because it hits someone's back because the room is that packed. There's just like 40 people in this bedroom and that can't support it. And I managed to squeeze in there and I hear, your voice. Like, and I'm trying to sneak in there and be all quiet. And, and it immediately tugs at my heartstrings. And I sit down and I'm just like in awe. And then I think you had said, feel free to sing along as long as you don't overpower, blah, blah, blah. And then for the first time ever, I think I started singing like outside of my car shower, like with other people. And, David, one of our other mutual friends, we were like singing together and like we got way closer over that too. And it was just like this. Wow. You could feel the energy in the room become one during the song. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is something special. So yeah, that is to say for the viewers, please go listen to it. You'll really like it.
Oh, it's so cool to hear that story from your perspective. Thank you for sharing that. That was like really touching.
Yeah, it's easy to say because it's true. Here's another good nugget for people. It sounds like we've been talking a lot about speaking the truth, right, and living your truth. And yeah, once you start doing that, life. Well, yeah. Like I think you've just explained it in the way your life has turned around. I've experienced my own as well. The second I started being me and not who other people wanted me to be, or I started realizing what I liked versus what other people think I should like, golf, or other, stereotypical financy things in my first job. That stuff started really coming together for me. Everything started like clicking into place. So yeah, there's a good nugget for people too who don't know where to start, is just start by speaking the truth.
Right. And if I may, that's actually a really, really good nugget in and of itself, is the importance. And this is something I'm like now recognizing, is we can't just be like, oh, just do what you love to do. Because for me, I was like, I don't know what I love to do because I've spent so long doing what other people told me I love to do. And, what we put our focus on, that's what we create more of, right? And so if we're like, well, like, I don't know, like for you, like, I don't know, golf. So you put your focus on golf because someone told you that that's what the cool kids do. And you're like, all right, I'll do this. And so you're going to create for yourself reality based around the frequency that most matches golf. And if that's not true for you, but people tell you it's true for you, it's of course no wonder that you'll be unhappy in there. You'll be like, well, I don't know. Like, I was told that if I do this, I'd be happy, but why aren't I? And like, people create effortlessly. We create effortlessly. And then we're like creating this whole reality for ourselves that isn't true to our actual authenticity. But we're creating something because we're putting our attention on it. And so we create more of that. And so it's as soon as we start being like, whoa, that's not actually mine, that's not actually true for me, and we start looking at what is true for us, that we can then create a reality around that. And then that's when things start, quote unquote, clicking. It's like it's always been there and it feels like it's clicking and like, oh, it's finally starting to like feel right. It's because you're following your truth. And it's because you're doing what's right for you and what feels good for you. And of course, like life will continue to reflect that back to you.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. This reality you construct, or even taking it one further, is like you are constructing your reality. You got to take that as truth. So, and reality is so there to support you that even if you try to make a fake one, it'll let you to an extent.
Exactly. Yes. Right.
And so yeah, then it's like, well, if you start doing it towards your truth, then things will line up better. But I also want to get into like one more, like, I guess, point of process, which is, you said you didn't know what you loved, yet. And so how did you start figuring that out?
Well, it started for me by leaving what I thought was proof of my worth, which is a good paying job in an advertising agency, and being like, wait, why am I actually doing this? And then, so this is also an energetics thing, is like, once you let go of, we only have so much energy in our lives. And so if all of it is put into one thing, there's not a whole lot of room for other things to come in. And so we have to be willing to let go of what's not serving us. And that as soon as we do that, we create spaciousness. And then once that spaciousness is there, then we can get into the inquiry stage of being like, well, what does serve me? And then life will present you with options. It'll be like, do you like this? And then you can be like, yeah, kinda, more of that. Or you'll be like, no, I'm not really crazy about that, and like move on from that. And so it is about like being able to let go of what's not serving you. And that's why people, I think, are so resistant to the spiritual path, because they think they're going to have to sacrifice something. You know, like something that deep down we know like isn't the greatest for us, you know? No, I'm not, you know, I love, I'm pretending here. I'm pretending to be somebody. I love alcohol and I don't want to let that go. But like deep down, you know, like you kind of have a drinking problem, but you don't want to give it up because you're like, what will that mean for me? But as soon as you do, you create space inside of your life for something more fulfilling to come in. It can't come in if you're blocking it with something else. And so that's also going back to what we said earlier, but with the magic wand, that's why I would get rid of my fear, because my fear is blocking me from what I actually truly deeply desire, you know, which is freedom. And
well, that's also a really big point, which we'll get to in a little bit. Yeah, we've been all over the place, but no regrets, whatever.
This is my life.
That's fine. Yeah, it's just going with the flow. Cool. So yeah, that was the magic wand question for like 10 minutes. So, you know, I'm going to go into some like more broad things, right? Well, specific and then broad things. We're going to talk about fear and inspiration. So specifically, can you tell me about a moment when you were afraid? It can be recent, it could be earlier ago, but one that you think is what stands out to you. And then after, tell me about how you deal with fear in your life.
Yeah. Okay, I will actually. This is a good one because it's very fresh for me.
Okay.
A time when I was very afraid was just this last weekend.
Oh.
So I told you about all this stuff that happened in my life, and I literally just shared my entire truth with you. I had not shared that entire truth with everybody in my life. And I was seeing how I was being more authentic and more real. I was being really honest in all areas of my life, except with my family, specifically a family member. Two, really, but really one who has been there for me my whole life, who I'm really afraid to disappoint, really afraid that she won't love me, really afraid that I'll let her down. And I knew that what I had to do was be honest with her. I knew that I would not be whole if I was being real in all areas of my life, except for this one little part. So I asked her this weekend if she wanted to get together. And we went on a hike. And on that hike, I told her everything. I laid it all down for her. I was like, here's my entire truth. I was arrested. I was put in jail because of smoking weed. I actually went to Peru to sit with ayahuasca. I was actually deeply depressed in college. I was suppressing all of this. I was doing all of that. Sorry that I lied. I lied about everything. I just told her all of it. And I was terrified to do that. I was so scared because I was scared of what the reaction would be. I was scared that she would be like, I don't love you. You know, not that she would ever say that, but that was the story that I was creating. I was really terrified that she would abandon me. And the way that I deal with my fear, I just told it to you. I face it. I just go right into it. I know that some of them take time. Some of them definitely take more time than others. It took me a while to gather up the courage to and the belief in myself and the non-attachment to the outcome to be able to go and have that conversation with her. It didn't just happen like that. But I knew that like this was something that I was going to have to do. And so I did what I needed to do to gather up the attention and awareness and intention that would be required to do that. So that, yeah.
Could you go into like how you gathered all that?
lots of meditation, and again, like more shadow work, you know, and just being like, well, what am I actually afraid of? I'm afraid of not being loved. And then going into that and being like, well, that's impossible. I am so loved, you know, and like basically like retelling myself the story. That's all we're doing. We're just storytelling. And so if I know that, then I can rewrite my narrative. So like looking at fear and there's a big question, because there's a lot of things that are done. You know, I work with my dreams a lot, and so my dreams guide me. And then lots of like daily work, daily shadow work, rewiring, like I was saying, and you know, finding expanders who are doing this too, and listening to their stories and feeling inspired by that, and then just like gathering up my courage and going and doing it myself, and knowing that on the other side of my fear is my freedom.
Put that in the song too.
I shouldn't I?
That's amazing. Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of repeat techniques to use: meditation, shadow work, running at it, not away from it, right? Knowing that you're loved underneath everything. And then you mentioned a word that I actually hadn't heard before, which was expander. Could you expand on that?
Yeah. An expander, the first time I ever heard of it was from this woman, Lacey Phillips, who has this business called To Be Magnetic, and she's like kind of known for her manifestation. And so she explains expanders as someone that you look at who is doing what you want to be doing. And sometimes we look at people like that and we get jealous of them, but really what we should do is look at them and be like, oh my God, you are bringing into my awareness what is possible.
Dig it.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I actually had a good conversation with Chelsea about the whole, when you see someone who's got what you want and how you react to that. And I just want to add this is one of my nuggets in there, that jealousy can actually be like quite a strong motivator. And it's not necessarily, jealousy and envy actually are two different things. And jealousy itself is like, you know, can be a way to motivate you to achieve. Like when you have like two young children and like the little sister can reach the doorknob, but the son who's shorter can't yet. And so he'll start jumping for it because she sees her doing it. Right. And it's like, if that wasn't there, it might never have happened. Right. And so it's actually quite a powerful thing in and of itself. If you look at it honestly and say, why am I jealous? Oh, because I want to do the thing. And then you can build determination, because you realize like, it's actually that thing that I want. It's not that I'm mad at this person, which is where envy comes in. That's the other side of it, the negative orientation. But, you know, and use these things as tools. And to your point, if you dive deep into it and figure out like, why am I really jealous? It's like, oh, I want to do that thing. All right, I'm going to fucking do that thing then, you know, like, right? I'm going to jump for the doorknob. So yeah. And I guess this is also to say like, you know, if you do feel jealousy, not to be ashamed of it either. And I think maybe that could be said for all emotions is, you know, don't feel ashamed of your emotion. And I guess what we're saying of fear as well, because we also get caught up in running away from the fear because we feel like we're not supposed to be afraid, right? Heroes are never afraid. Like, blah, 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 Disney movies taught me blah. So don't be ashamed of it and look at it honestly with truthful eyes, right? And run towards it and embrace it. So yeah, that aside, let's flip this coin, and can you tell me how you deal with inspiration? Like, can you first actually start with a moment of great inspiration, and then generally how inspiration enters your life?
Oh, that's such a big one too, because inspiration is so infinite. Like, I don't know if I can answer that question.
I believe in you.
Because I'm inspired like every day.
Ooh.
Being on this podcast is inspiring. Having this conversation is inspiring. Being at the grocery store and like watching someone decide between two different fruits, to me, is inspiring. Like, breaking it down, what does inspiring actually mean? It's in spiritus, in spirit. When we are inspired, we are in spirit. And if my daily practice aligns me with spirit, then by nature, I will be in spiritus. By nature, I will be inspired always.
How about, So first of all, wow, I actually didn't know that. So then maybe I need to reword the question. But how about if I say, can you tell me about a big light bulb moment, like an aha, ooh, this is it, like a moment of great inspiration, maybe that caused some shift or major thing in your life to manifest, or was the triggering point for?
Oh, I have so many to choose from. Let me try and pick one that is succinct.
We could do more than one too if you want.
But because there's just so many, I'm like, okay, do I start from today, from yesterday, from I'm gonna pick obviously a monumental one. Super easy is an ayahuasca. Like everything that happened in my ayahuasca journey was extremely inspiring, and just walking away from that and being like, yeah, I understand the power of music. I understand the power of medicine music specifically. I understand the power of words. So that was a big one. I went to an Abraham Hicks workshop. That was a big one. Anytime I'm on Instagram and I read a quote that I'm moved by, that's big, which I realize I'm still dancing around the answer to your question, but I'm trying to point at the fact that there is inspiration everywhere. I was inspired. I have a friend, and I'm bringing this one up because it's the most fresh, and it's actually one that was like, oh wow, okay, that was really inspiring in the sense of it's helping me to connect back with spirit, and it's helping me to connect back with what would be more expansive for me, what would help me grow. And she inspired me because her and her partner are exploring an open relationship. They have been in an open relationship. They're married, but they've been in an open relationship. And recently it's become more challenging for her. And so watching her in her process of detaching from the emotions and the story she's telling herself about what it means that her partner is now exploring partnership with someone else, that to me is extremely inspiring. Watching her go into her shadow and sit with that. Well, what is this? What does this actually feel like? And watching her forgive herself, and watching her accept and still love fearlessly is so inspiring to me.
Okay. That is, well, there would be a lot to unpack in there. I have many questions about that and opinions and curiosities, but I won't rabbit hole into it.
Right.
But that does sound like from the level you were describing that, absolutely. Because that's a really tricky situation, and for her to be able to deal with that head on is phenomenal.
That's inspiring, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just me imagining it. I'm not even in it. So, well, anyway, so
right. And then what do you do with inspiration? What do we do with it? That's what's really important too. It's being like, you could watch a documentary and be like, I'm so inspired by these, children who are doing all this work, but then what? These
are my two favorite words, but I say, so what?
Right.
Yeah. Well, then, so what? So what do you do with it?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Oh, you.
Right. Well, yeah. So for using that example of my friend, then that inspires me to look at myself and be like, where in my life can I practice more non-attachment? How can I love more fearlessly? How can I be more unconditional with my love? And that inspires me to turn inward and do more work on myself with that. Rather than just being like, wow, that's really cool that you did that, and then carrying on my merry way. It's like, no, let me take that and do something with it. It moves something in me for a reason,
Yeah. And that goes into the, reflect part of this podcast, and I guess meditation as a tool again. So take the time, people. That's the takeaway from that, right? Is be inspired and do something with it.
Yeah.
Cool. So moving on. So we're going to get kind of deeper into the self-building part of it, because I think a lot of people, unless they've been on this kind of self-help path, haven't really thought much about, or maybe haven't had a framework by which to think about how to rebuild and or improve themselves. And so I kind of want to start with like just baseline, like what character traits do you attribute to your success now?
Curiosity, courage, devotion, play.
That's a great foursome right there. For real. Like, amen. Say that again.
Curiosity? No.
And then of those and any others, you know, which came naturally to you and like which did you have to develop?
Good question. I've always been really curious. Always. Curiosity I would say is definitely always come natural to me. I guess I was really courageous because I was able to be like, my father is the CEO of Dasani, and absolutely not flinch. That takes some courage. And then devotion, not so naturally. And then I've always been quite playful.
Mm-hmm. And so devotion's an interesting concept that maybe not many people are familiar with. Like, what's devotion mean to you?
The willingness to say yes to what is for me over and over and over again.
And how do you know it's for you?
Good question. I'm actually on a bit of a journey with that right now because I'm now developing a system for knowing when the voice of my fear is speaking and when the voice of my intuition is speaking. And when I'm really clear on myself, then I know what's for me because my intuition will be like this one. So how do you know what's for you? Well, you got to like tune in, turn inwards, get to know yourself.
And you might guess what I'm going to ask next. What's the system?
That's the system. That's it right there.
Oh.
That's it. Being like, okay, what does the voice of my fear sound like? What does the voice of my intuition sound like? And then practicing, right? It's all just this like muscle. It's a muscle, really. Belief is a muscle and trust is a muscle. And so just like constantly testing it every day and being like, how much, what is it going to take for me to trust myself today? What's it going to take for me to believe in myself, to believe this voice, and like just trying it in small ways.
That's really key right there. So if I can repeat it back, see if I get this, is listening to your internal voices, because there are many, and learning what each one sounds like and which one each one is. So identifying, is this my fear speaking or is this my intuition speaking? Yeah, it's funny. That's something I had recently begun doing as well, as I realized like I also construct various fear-based realities that don't necessarily have any basis, but and I have noticed that they have different tones. So yeah, also spoiler, if you have voices in your head, that's normal.
Yes, actually, it's quite a gift.
And yeah, exactly. It is a gift. And so I think it's worth mentioning that. So hopefully people can help reframe that a bit, because it's seen as like, oh my God, you have a voice in your head. What the fuck? What's wrong with you? So no, nothing's wrong with you. That is normal. So yeah, great. Listen to their tone. Okay. So similar question then, how did you discover your strengths?
Just practice. I think my strengths are pretty tied to my curiosities. What I'm curious about. I'm curious about knowing more of myself, for example, and that requires a lot of letting go. And I'm very good at letting go. I'm not very good at it. I'm a lot better at it than what would be considered an average amount of being good at letting go.
Whoever's out there measuring, please let us know.
Right? Like, let me know if I'm doing a good job. Yeah, and just like practicing it and developing it and being like, what do I love to do? And how did I discover my strengths? Yeah.
Just following curiosity.
Following my curiosity, and then like if it's something is really interesting to me, like chances are I'm gonna strengthen my relationship with that, and in doing that it becomes an asset.
That's great. That sounds really easy for anyone to follow too. Right? So just, what are you drawn to? Check it out.
Check it out.
Cool. Now on the flip side, how do you learn about any shortcomings or flaws, and then how do you address them, if at all? I know you do, but
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so that's also another energetics thing. And a bit esoteric, but everything that's reflected back to me, everything that I experience in my life is a reflection of what's going on internally. So I experience my weaknesses and my shortcomings by seeing what triggers me, seeing what hurts me, seeing what I'm aroused by, seeing what makes me frustrated, makes me angry, whatever I have like an emotion, like a quote unquote negative emotion to, shows me where my shortcomings are. So if I'm triggered by someone, if I'm having a conversation with someone and I'm like feeling myself triggered, as in I'm feeling myself, getting angry or frustrated or annoyed, or I want to shut down, then I'll be like, whoa, what is it about this person? For example, like if someone, what used to trigger me when I was back then was people lying. I would get so mad. Like, I know that you're lying.
Well, you were lying?
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly.
That's funny.
So like, that's my shortcoming right there. It bothers me because I'm lying. This person is reflecting back to me my weaknesses. And that's what I think is super interesting on a metaphysical level about like how the universe works. Is it's all just like reflecting back to you exactly what you are. And so that's why I think relationships are such a great container for growth when you're conscious of it, because you can be like, oh wow, it really bothers me when this person does this. Well, it's because it's reflecting to you what exists inside of you that is asking to be given more love to, what's asking to be brought to the light, so that is how I see my shortcomings. And I've also gotten, we have lots of blind sides too, and so being able to like witness what holds you back, like why aren't you willing to do the work? Why aren't you, for me, like putting up your website? Why aren't you sitting down and writing music, for example, things like that? I'll just get curious about it and be like, yeah, why aren't I writing music right now in this specific phase of my life? Like, is it something that's holding me back, or is it because I'm in an integration stage? Which in this case, I'm in an integration stage.
Would you explain what that is for people?
So we go through these cycles of expansion and contraction. And when we're in expansion, it's like, oh my God, everything is happening. Like it's all clicking, right? Everything is just like, whoa, I'm getting the producer that I like dreamed of. I'm getting like the audience that I dreamed of. I'm getting like booked, and I'm getting all these things, and I feel better, and all these opportunities are coming to me, and my house is getting manifested, and my partner's getting manifested, and all these like amazing things are happening, right? That's the expansion. You're growing. Things are expanding for you. And then what follows after that is a contraction, where we have to kind of like get still again and integrate that into our lives. So let me think of a tangible example. So like when a woman gives birth, she's expanding, right? Like she's opening up to like give birth to this being, and then once that being is out, like she closes again. So this expansion contraction, we've been doing it since birth.
Like breathing.
Exactly, like breathing. Yeah, if we were to just like expand our lungs and just hold it, we would pass out, right? And just in the same regard, like if we were to exhale and hold that, we would pass out too. And so it is like that's like the breath of life. It's this like, and if we don't take time to allow for that integration, then we could crash. And so integration for me is like, oh my gosh, I just spent all of this energy into creating the album, and now I have to take a break to like integrate everything that's happened, to allow that to like, what's another word for integrate? Kind of be like
Absorb.
Yeah.
Soak,
yeah, like
marinate.
Yeah, and not just marinate, but like allow it to like assimilate itself into your DNA, for example, or into your frequency, into your energy body.
Yeah, that's Well put. I also had one thing, if it's like the exhalation, right? Think of how nice it is to sigh in relief, right? You feel that relief when you release, when you contract again, and you have this huge expansion. You're like, right?
Yeah.
Like that, but for your life.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way of putting it. I love that.
Take a moment, experience relief, slow down, and I think that, life is clearly cyclical. The seasons, right? The tides, the way we breathe, everything seems to be cyclical. And one thing that I've seen, at least in mine, that ties into this is that when you embrace the cycles and don't try to force, winter to be summer, for example, to use a symbol, right? And like when you're on a roll and so many things are lining up, like taking that moment to let it all integrate and slow down is better than trying to force more, right? Because you might find you're not going to be able to force more. And then you end up even more exhausted, right, as a result.
Yes.
So all to say to, be aware of these things. Life isn't always going to be like up and to the right. There's going to be slower, flatter, maybe I think you've seen Lila's graph where it's like loop-de-loops and so
yeah, it's really important to take the time for the sacred pause.
Ooh, that's a good word. 2 words, but yeah.
Allow the momentum, allow all of your bodies, your physical, spiritual, and emotional bodies to catch up with each other. Because otherwise they're like totally out of whack, and then you start like getting like physical symptoms, or like energetically you start to feel off or something. It's really important to like take a pause, to let it all come together and line back up again. And then like when it gets lined back up again, like you're at a totally new frequency.
Well put. Awesome. Big things we're talking about here. I'm digging it. I hope everyone else is too. Cool. So that was the shortcomings side of it. We talked about the strengths. I kind of want to bring this to the present as well. So, in the realm of vulnerability, what is something that you're struggling with or keeping you up at night right now, and how are you grappling with it?
Yeah, it is a vulnerable question. Something I'm struggling with right now, I guess I kind of already said it, which is this, my beliefs are now, so as I level up and as I continue to expand, I'm at this like precipice of having to let go of my old beliefs of the way that I thought that life was. And that's challenging. And that's where I'm practicing non-attachment. I don't want to be attached to my beliefs, because then I'll just like put myself in a box.
Okay. That's meta. That's big. But also very relevant, I think.
Right. Well, because everything else to me is like, it's not really a challenge, it's like, it's all an illusion anyways. This is the juicy stuff right here, is like, oh, my beliefs are expanding and I'm wanting to hold on to what like was old for me. Like everything else, I can't even think of anything else, like,
yeah.
I just trust.
Yeah. That's huge. And I think that's also another good point to double click on for a second, is like, if you don't know what your beliefs are, find out. Right? Because many people, or at least me in my past, I didn't for a very long time. I had a few that I was aware of, like moral things, but dig in there and see what you find. It's worth it for sure. Okay, so moving on. So this actually ties into kind of like your shadow work stuff, but I just want to ask the specific question of, how do you recover from feeling down or looking for excuses?
How do I recover from feeling down? I understand. How do I recover from...
Yeah, if you're like, so you were mentioning like you're not making your website or whatever, like, do you ever find it's because do you ever find yourself making excuses for not doing a thing?
Oh, absolutely. And those are my shadows. Those are my small selves. Those are my selves that are like, no, we like it here. It's comfortable. We're safe here. We don't have to be seen. We don't have to risk anything. It's all good. Look at how good it is here. Look, you're manifesting things that you want to see. 333. Look, you're already powerful. You don't need to keep going. And I'm like, it's tempting. It's seductive for sure. But my vision is so big and my devotion is so strong that I gently, kindly, as kind as I can be to myself, will be like, I hear you. I hear you. I know that you're scared, and I want to take you with me on this journey. It's going to be good for both of us. We're both going to grow. Lots of patience and self-love, self-care. And I'm surrounded by an amazing group of people who hold me at my highest too.
Okay. Great. Yeah. The next question we've already answered. Just tell me about a time you had a so what moment. So we dove into that. All right. How about one more on the opposite end of, looking for excuses? Can you tell me about a recent time you were brave, other than the telling the truth to your near relative?
Yeah, actually I can. This entire year for me is a year of like facing all my fears. I've been scared of snakes my entire life. And I have reoccurring dreams about them where they're chasing me and I'm terrified of them, and I wake up in a sweat. And then recently my dream started to change a little bit, and I've been able to look at the snake. And that's a reoccurring dream. I actually turn around and face the snake, and then I suddenly am holding the snake in my hand. And so I decided to actualize that and bring it into the physical world. And I joined an experience where you can dance with snakes.
What?
And it was hard. It was like they first brought the snakes out and I literally started crying. And then there was they're handing them out and I was just frozen crying. And then, she brings out the last snake and holds it in front of me. And I was terrified. I was shaking as I'm reaching my hand out to hold this thing. And she's like, you don't have to hold it if you don't want to, but she's super sweet and super gentle. And I was like, okay, knowing that I came here to do this once again, looking at my fear in the eye and being I know that on the other side of this is freedom. And so I'm shaking, putting my hands out. She puts it on my hands and I'm just oh my God. I'm crying, I'm purging the fear of snakes. And then there comes a point where she puts it around my neck, and that makes me cry even more. And by the end of the hour of holding on, of literally being with this snake, I'm full on dancing with it. I'm kissing it and caressing it and totally in love with it. I think it's adorable. The next day I woke up and I was I'm gonna go to the pet store and get a snake. I didn't, but it's definitely on my mind. And now I know that after I did that, and so that happened at the end of January, and then I had my conversation with my aunt, first weekend of February or whatever.
So you're on a roll.
Yes. So I was if I can do these two things, I can literally do anything.
Okay. Okay. Is that why you have one on your finger now?
I now have a snake ring on my finger, which I actually got before I danced with the snakes, because I'm, again, looking at my fears and working my way up to it.
That is hugely inspirational and beyond cool. Fear of snakes, I know, is pretty big.
Yeah, actually the snakes represent power and shame and sexuality. So when I'm running away from snakes in my dream, I'm running away from my power.
Oh, shit.
And then being able to actually hold it in my hands. Oh, now I feel equipped to hold my power.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's, metaphysically crazy. And if I may, I want to add in what I think makes it even more crazy. Physically. We evolved from animals that got eaten by snakes. So we have literal circuitry in our nervous system that goes, snake, run. Yeah, it's baked into us for hundreds of thousands of years, and you just conquered that.
Yes. Oh, and it was so freeing. Oh my gosh, it was so freeing. I literally walked away from that, and I actually said, I was I can do anything. That's what gave me the courage to talk to my aunt. And then that builds up more courage to face more fears, fear of being seen, fear of being misunderstood, all of these things. Bring it. Okay, I should watch what I'm saying. But for real though, it's all good,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Seriously amazing. This is great stuff. Cool. Well, that closes out our self-building section. 2 more to go.
Cool.
These are shorter ones, but now we're getting to like the meat of it, which is, we're
Wow,
going to talk.
now we're getting to the meat of it? Okay.
Which is like meaning and fulfillment, right? Which we've been talking about before, and, kind of is the purpose of the podcast. But I think all this is building up to that, right? And then just actionable advice, which we've already been sprinkling throughout it. But
Totally.
yeah, we're coming around near the end. So we've actually already talked about where you are in your journey. And you alluded to a giant grand vision. And so, what I want to ask is, do you have a destination in mind? If so, what is it?
Absolutely. Unification of the entire global planet.
Oh, that's small.
Yeah. Nothing too crazy.
It's boring.
Yeah, I know. Just unity consciousness. Your average stuff.
Since that is not at all the average stuff, and our viewers might not be familiar with the concept, how would you explain it?
Unity consciousness is the acceptance of everyone as their most authentic selves. First within ourselves and then within each other. Unity consciousness is knowing that no one is greater or lesser than anyone else. Unity consciousness is the remembrance of our natural state, which is divine. Unity consciousness is the coming together of all people, and there are prophecies about this. And that, the rainbow people coming together as one whole unified power, really, that everyone has access to clean water, everyone has access to organic non-GMO foods, everyone has access to a home, everyone has access to clean clothes. We're all lifting each other up, we're all helping each other out, we're all money isn't a thing. Like we're not money, I love money. Money is fantastic, and it's definitely doing its purpose right now. But in a world that's totally unified, we have no purpose for it, because we would know, like, if I do something for you, I'm first of all doing it because I love you unconditionally, and I don't actually expect anything back. And in doing that, like, you're empowered to do the same thing, and that's all we're doing. It's just like this ever-flowing circuit of energy that is not possessive and is not possessed by anyone or anything either. So unity consciousness is an equal world, in a world where there's no competition, there's no, like, you're just doing it because you want to do it, you're doing it because you love to do it, you're doing it because it brings you joy, and you know that alongside you everybody else is doing the same thing. They're doing it because it brings them joy, and it's benefiting the whole too. That's a big one too. It's like is it for the good of all? So everything we're doing is for the good of all. It's unity consciousness.
Okay. Big concepts.
Yeah.
Might be hard to grasp for some, but...
Right, and I'm definitely not saying that, like, I'm going to bring unity consciousness, but, like, I will do my part in it, just a puzzle piece amongst this, like, gigantic vision that's been put in place.
Yeah, and I think everyone does have a part to play in that.
Absolutely.
And I think that's part of the whole thing. And that tied actually in very nicely to, I want to get into, like, what the right path feels like, and you touched on, things that bring you joy, and but as we're here to guide, people who might feel lost, I want to get into, two things. So number one, do you always feel like you're on the right path? And if so, what's it feel like? And then number two, when do you feel lost, to help people recognize if they're on or off?
Well, on a level of my being, I know I'm always on the right path. I know that. That's the thing, is there is no wrong path. So by nature, we are always on the right path, but our egos will tell us otherwise, and will create stories of, like, I'm not on the right path. Like, even somebody who's, like, so deep in the Maya and the illusion in the Matrix, who's just, like, so unhappy and, like, live, totally out of alignment with their truth, like, even they're on the right path. There is no wrong path, and it's just, like, a matter of, like, how do you want to feel while you're on the path, and, like, what even is the path? Like, the path, like, there's no, like, to me, one path. it's just like all truths are true, you know? And I think it just comes down to how do you want to feel on it? So that guy who, you know, is in the matrix and doesn't actually love his job, he's on the right, quote unquote, like the right path. He's doing exactly what is right for him. But how does he feel? Does he love it? No. Well, then change your path. Change what you want to do. If you don't love what you're doing, you have the free will. No matter what anybody tells you, you have the free will to make it something different. And you know, like that can get into a whole thing. You know, people could bring up all sorts of reasons for why not everybody has free will. And I really have a lot of sympathy for that and a lot of empathy for it. But we won't go there. But
that could be a whole nother podcast.
That's a whole different thing. Yeah.
Does free will exist? I will say I think it does. And I feel the same for people who think it might be limited in certain cases. And but
to your point, how do you know you're on the right path? Does it feel good? And if it doesn't, then reevaluate. Yeah.
I think one thing that just came to me as we were talking about your journey, and I was thinking, well, you know, my initial reaction was like, well, you said when you were lying about everything that was horrible, but like once you zoom out, like that's in the moment, but once you zoom out and look at from a broader perspective over many years, it's like, oh, that was part of the path, right? But when you're in it, you know, miserable, it sounds, right? So, so yeah, I think we can conclude this or summarize this with you're always on it, but if you're feeling bad, you might want to look at what you can change.
Yes. Yeah. If it doesn't feel good, then do something different.
True that.
If it doesn't feel good, then you're out of alignment with what's true for you.
True that. And I'd also like to add, figure out what actually feels good for you, right? Because it can feel good to sit at home and smoke weed all day, but then like if you blew off all your commitments to people, that again, you know, isn't good in the long run. So it's what is your definition of you? Are you just right now? If so, go get blackout drunk, right? But you're also you tomorrow. So you're going to be hungover tomorrow. So you're you today and you're you tomorrow and you're you for the rest of however long you're alive. And you're not just you're you and the people you care about, whether it's your friends or your family, maybe community, or depending on how patriotic you are, your country, right? And so that's how you can act in alignment, is once you understand all these things, that it's not just you now, you're much broader than that.
Oh, totally. That's a great point. And that the you that you are now will evolve too. And so you gotta keep up with it, you know, like constantly asking yourself, does this still feel good? Is this still in support of my highest self? I guess would be like, you know, if you are the kind of person who, you're right, like if you're sitting on the couch all day and you're smoking weed, like maybe that feels good for you. And at some point it won't. I guarantee that at some point it won't feel good for you.
Yes. Shout out to all you stubborn stoners, but
been there, done that.
Same.
There's more for you, I promise.
Yeah.
Look out from your Cheetos bag.
Cool. So yeah, well, let's get to the meat of this then. Like, so what makes you feel fulfilled, and where are you finding meaning in your life right now?
What makes me feel fulfilled? When I'm in service to a higher good, to the highest good, to the greatest good for all. That makes me feel really fulfilled. And when I'm in my most authentic truth, I feel really fulfilled. What was the second part?
You know, where are you finding meaning?
Oh yeah, where am I finding meaning? It's funny. It's a funny question because I'm at the point in my life where humans are such meaning-making machines. You know, where it's like, well, what's the meaning of this? What's the meaning of that? Does this have meaning? Like, it all has meaning. So for me, in everything, I could find meaning in everything, you know, and I could also find meaning in nothing, which in of itself is finding meaning in something. But
language,
right? Language, blah, blah. But fulfillment, definitely feeling fulfilled in being in my highest purpose and finding fulfillment in devoting myself to my highest self and my most expanded self. And I find fulfillment in my highest excitement and greatest joy.
This dovetails really nicely because you mentioned, you know, kind of highest purpose and things. And I think that that to me is rooted in intention, the intention for your action, what you're trying to do with it, right? And your intention is to serve your highest purpose, whatever that may be. And you also mentioned the word service, and I ran across a really cool framework recently called, well, it's not called anything, but where you examine whether the intention of your action is in service to yourself or in service to others. And so what I'd like to ask you is, like, which one do you find is more aligned with that highest, you? Like, which one is more rewarding? Which one provides you the most fulfillment or meaning?
I feel like you already know how I'm going to answer this. Yeah. Service to self versus services to others. Like, what's the difference?
Okay, well, classically, I don't know. What is the difference to you?
I don't believe in a difference. I think that it's all unification. Like, that's oneness right there, is knowing that a service to myself is a service to you. Me taking the time and space to get to know myself did a service to you. Did a service to the grocery clerk. Did a service to my family. So there's that. And then, like, me doing a service to someone else, like me doing a service to someone else is also doing a service to me as well. So if I'm showing up for my family, then I'm showing up for myself. If I'm showing up for this podcast, I'm showing up for myself. That's it. It's just oneness. Like, I don't.
Could I slightly challenge that?
Please.
So when you were a klepto, who was that serving other than yourself?
Oh, wow. Good one. Well, it serves the illusion. It serves the matrix for sure. It serves my future self because my future self now has to forgive and learn forgiveness. And in doing that, I'm serving the collective because now I'm forgiving. And like we just said, when I'm bettering myself, I'm bettering the world.
So it sounds like the definition, again, changes upon your perspective. If you're zoomed in on that moment, it doesn't seem to be serving anybody but yourself. But years later, it made you who you are today.
Totally, yeah. And at the time, too, like, who knows, like, my friends who I had at that time, like, who were witnessing me stealing, like, it served them, too, because then they're, like, either feeding into that and being like, I'm also going to do that. And then, like, they're branching off, and their future self is now having to, be like, oh, now I'm going to have to forgive that. Or it's serving them by them being like, I don't want to steal. And so then they're doing something better for themselves, It's serving the store clerk who has to then, like, step into their power and be like, you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And it shows the variety of different perspectives and truths that do surround a seemingly unidimensional event, right? Yes. You might think stealing's bad. Yes, and, which are my other two favorite words, put next to each other. Yes, it is bad in that moment, and it's much more than you think it is.
Exactly, going right back into oneness. Everything is helping everything.
Yeah. I had a funny insight the other day, and I was talking to Chelsea, and, like, we were talking about, like, evil or malevolent spirits. And one thing that just blurted out of my mouth was, evil spirits are here to teach you to love what you thought initially couldn't be loved.
Yep. That's exactly it.
So klepto Maite is one of them. So there's a lesson in there too. And oh my gosh, I'm just thinking of the political climate right now. I'm like, everyone has a lot of forgiving to do. Election year's coming up.
Yes, and a whole lot of being like the universe is just helping us refine our preferences.
Could you dive more into that?
Yeah, so if we're like, oh my God, like, I don't love how, I'm just going to say it, like, if I don't love the way that the world is run right now, then it helps me be like, well, it helps me refine that and be like, how would I like the world to be run? In much the same way that when you're manifesting, if you're like, I want a car, then the universe will be like, here are all these cars. And you're like, okay, whoa, like I want a car that's like, you know, new. And they'll be like, okay, here are all the new cars. And you're like, well, I want the car to be new and I want it to be this certain make.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, okay, here's, you know, and you're just like constantly narrowing down your preferences.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to manifestation, people will stop at a certain stage. They'll be like, well, it can't get better than this. The trick is it can.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
you know this. You just got your dream car.
I did, yeah. And it can get better because I'm a tinkerer and I'm going to change some things.
Exactly.
But yeah, well put. And I'd also like to quote one of my favorite late philosophers, Alan Watts here.
I love him.
And yeah, genius on many levels. If you guys haven't listened to him, please do. He's got lectures online on YouTube. And he talks about the game of life. And, you know, if we weren't able to, now I'm plugging you in here, if we weren't able to continually improve upon whatever is coming to us, then the game wouldn't be worth a candle. Like in that, you know, if the game is to get the candle, like it wouldn't be worth it at all and you might as well just not play. Right. You know, and that's, which is kind of the other option, which you had mentioned earlier, which is if you find a way to off yourself, you're like, the game isn't worth it for me. I'm done. Like, fuck this, I'm out. Right. So you got to find a game that's worth a candle, and life appears to be set up in such a way that it is. Otherwise, you know, not to attribute it to personality, even though I really like doing that, it wouldn't be here if it wasn't worth it. So, you know, just although I'm sure many people out there have felt that type of hopelessness, and you know, you're not the first guest to say that on this podcast. I think one of the things I want to leave people with, among all the other beautiful gems you've dropped here today, is that it is worth a candle. And there are many ways out of the situations you're in. And maybe looking back, you know, in a few years from now, you'll be like, oh my God, that was actually part of the path. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, just wanted to drop that in there.
And also really fast, you said something that reminded me of this, is that you never know more clearly what you want than when you know what you don't want. And so when we are so far from knowing who we are and we're creating things that are from a place of inauthenticity, then we're creating situations that we don't actually want. And that helps us to, again, refine our preference and to help us know what we actually do want. So if you're in a situation where things are not how you want it, that's a great place to be, because now you know what you don't want, and you never know more clearly what you do want than when you know what you don't want. And when you know what you want, then you can be a conscious creator of your life, and you can look at it and you can go, okay, I don't want this, and focus on the opposite of that. What do you want? And then focus on that, and then watch as things shift. And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, it's like a pendulum swinging that slowly gets closer to center. And then also one note on the political stuff that popped up. I also want to plug a friend, and you know, I think you might know Andrew Dunn Ava. But anyway, they are working on a new political party. So for anyone who's feeling like the system that we have or not the system, but the parties we have are kind of whack, check out One Nation. I just want to plug this. Cool. It's been very inspiring to me. It's made up of some of my favorite thinkers who talk about exactly this, and coming up with kind of all-win methodologies and harnessing the power of our co-creative consciousness and developing a world in which we can actually all follow our joys, and doing so through rigorous practices. So, yep, check out One Nation. Okay, we're nearing the end.
It's a long podcast.
It is.
There's a lot to unpack.
Oh yeah. So we touched on a lot of this stuff already. I have one question on motivation and then another one on spirituality. I think just practically, like, what motivates you and gets you out of bed every morning?
Being so excited about what magic life has to show me that day. And I mean that, like, I know that sounds so cheesy, but I mean, like, literally it's gotten to a point where I'm like so in the ethers of just being like, I just love testing what's possible. Ooh. And being like, waking up and being like, okay, so today I'm going to be this, today I'm going to do this. And just like waiting to see how life delivers that to me. And I love to see my manifestations come to life. It's just it's literally become a game. And so that's what gets me out of bed every day. I'm just like, what have you to show me today?
Yeah. Okay. That's sending tingles down my spine. I'm like, that's some good stuff right there.
Like playing with the malleability of reality.
Nice. Okay. Well, yeah, for those of you who aren't able to see and are just listening, she means this. You can feel it in the air. Great. And that kind of dovetails into the next one, which is another large question, which is, are you religious or spiritual? And we've kind of talked about this a lot already, but maybe we could recap for our, audience. If you could do a 1-minute take on your spirituality? Or to whatever you need. You have all the space in the world.
Right. Well, I feel like I've encompassed it in the answers. My spirituality is that we are all divine. I grew up religious, and my religious background is the foundation of my spirituality, in that it instilled in me faith. And so my spiritual belief is that we're all divine, and that we all are benevolent, and that we are totally supported and totally loved, and that behind the curtains is this grand mystery that created all of this for fun and for play and for exploration of ourselves and our possibilities and our limitations. And
Okay, that's a great summary. And if if people wanted to know more about that general philosophy, do you have any places they might start?
Yeah, the way you said it, one was Alan Watts. That's a great one. Great teacher. Another one is Matt Kahn, like Khan on YouTube. He's got phenomenal talks, and he just like goes in on it, on the etheric and esoteric things. And then also just like, remembering it for yourself, really. Like these teachers are great. They're guide points. They're great, like, triggers to help you remember it for yourself. So like if you sit in meditation enough, like you'll remember it.
Okay. Yeah, true that. Just to add, some support to that. I met another girl who had similar experiences meditating. A friend's friend, and then also my girlfriend has had those experiences as well. So yes, people, it is possible. Give it a shot. All it takes is you. Which dovetails great into the final section of actionable advice. We've touched on a lot of this stuff, so I think we can kind of blow through this. So generally, how do you partition your time? Like from like work things or work or play, whatever, right?
My morning practice is the most important thing to me. That is, I'm devoted to that. I really, really, really do my best to not negotiate that. I wake up in the morning and I do my morning practice, and everything else follows.
What's that morning practice?
It involves waking up, moving my body, so doing a stretch or a yoga, breath work, sound alchemy, so like waking up my voice. There's a lot of vocal things that come up, and then meditation. And then after that, I make cacao and I drink my cacao and I'm present with my cacao, and then my day begins.
Okay. So there were a few cool key things in there I think everyone can get into. So, stretching, yoga, right? Find a nice place to do it. And about how long do you spend doing that?
My entire morning practice is about an hour and a half.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's about 45 minutes of the physical stuff, 45 minutes of the mind stuff.
Cool. And then I'd also like to plug breath work for a second, because I do that nearly every morning. I'm getting better at being strict with it. Or not strict, but consistent, I should say.
There you go, yeah.
Because it's not a strict thing. It's actually quite good. It's jumping off point for that for people. There's a guy, Wim Hof, WIM space HOF. Feel free to look him up. I do his thing every morning. I feel notably better and more level afterward every time, no matter what state I'm in going into it. So yeah, highly recommend if someone needs if you're short on time. It's like 5 to 15 minutes, depending on how many you want to do. But yeah, maybe start there. Okay, cool. So continuing actionable advice. How do you make people or time for people you care about?
I check in with myself first, and I'll be like, do I have the capacity? And then if I'm good with it, like if I'm like, yeah, I totally have the capacity, then I'll do really anything. As long as I'm not draining myself. And I don't mean like, oh, is this person going to drain me? I mean like, have I got enough energy to spend my time with this person? And if I do, then it's a yes. And if I don't, then it's a no. And the people I care about honor that. And I honor that in them as well.
That's great. Do you have any advice for people who maybe haven't reached that point of honoring with their friends? Like, how do you start that?
Yeah, setting boundaries.
Ooh.
Setting boundaries is a big one for people, you know, just to... I grew up in a home where there were no boundaries. So learning boundaries was a big part of my journey. Now I really honor it. I really honor my yes, and I really honor my no. Me saying yes to something means I have to say no to something else. So being able to like look at it and value myself. And it takes time. It of course takes time. Knowing how to value yourself, knowing how to set your boundaries and then stand in your boundaries.
And the next question, which you might guess, is how do you get to know yourself? And I think we talked about it, right?
Yeah, make time for it.
Sit down in a quiet place and...
Get curious.
Oh, yeah. About you.
Yeah, why not? Get curious. Yeah. Why am I the way that I am? Who am I? What have I come here for?
Yeah. Amen. And I promise you, you are very interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. So, okay. A little bit harder of a question. Actionable advice. Promise we're almost there. 3 more to go.
No problem. I love these.
Well, that's really good to hear. Me too. This is a bit tougher. So how do you challenge your beliefs or develop new perspectives?
I feel like it kind of just happens naturally. Like a belief will get me to a state, a certain space that I need to be in. It'll get me to the next level, if you will. And then I know when my belief is getting challenged, when like I'm not progressing. It's like, okay, why? Like I can't breach. Why aren't I getting any higher? Or like why aren't I growing? Then I know that there's a belief that served me that now needs to evolve. So to answer your question, it is like, well, when is it no longer serving me? When is it no longer helping me grow?
And then how do you find a new one?
Oh, well, then that's the whole journey, right? It's like, oh, cool. Like now I'm in this space where I'm needing to develop and evolve this. And that's the journey. That's the path. That's not the path, but that's the journey.
Are there specific steps you take? Like, are there consistent steps you can take to figure out the new perspective?
No, actually there's not, because I mean, there's like tools, you know, like what we talked about, like the meditation and things like that, but the belief just gets expanded on, and it could go anywhere. And honestly, it just becomes this like fun treasure hunt.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Treasure hunt. That's a good way of putting it, because that's what it is. At the end of the day, like you're finding treasure. Yeah.
And there's no way of knowing where the belief will take you. I have no way of knowing where it's going to take me. So I just get curious again.
Okay. Awesome. And then what advice would you like to offer our younger audience? Maybe they're just beginning self-discovery, careers.
Yeah, really, really try your best not to give in to what the social norm is. Really try your best to be courageous enough to go into your own self and to figure out what's true for me. Really try your best to do that. And it's going to be hard because your friends will tell you to be a certain way. Your family will tell you to be a certain way. Your schoolmates, your teachers will tell you to be a certain way. But just really try your best to just cancel all of that out and go inward and ask yourself, what do I love? What is true for me? You know, who am I? And then have the courage follow that, because I promise that in that exploration of the true self, you will find freedom, and you will expunge yourself from the latches of the matrix of society, of false stories that aren't for you. So just really try your best to be yourself and to be courageous in that, and it will only lead you to magnificent places. You will only be brought, it'll feel weird for a minute because you're so entrenched. You could be entrenched in an illusion of who you think you are, of who society tells you to be, of what the social media people say, but the pursuit of the true self it's just a glorious journey. So have the courage to go there.
Well said. Powerful stuff. And if I may, I'd like to yes and that. And add on, you also might find some things have been instantiated for a reason, societally speaking, like don't murder people would be one, extreme example of things not to do, and it's not a made up thing, right? Looking back in history, we've had many things actually implemented because they're what makes society work, right? Like don't drive on the wrong side of the road, like certain things like that. I think a lot of what you're talking about, absolutely. Culturally, maybe there's some things that are just like super wrong, like not valuing women or something like that, right? Absolutely. Or like if you're not wearing these types of shoes, like in SoCal, if you're not wearing Vans, you suck, right? Like those types of things, yes. And there are other things that we should, I think, be very wary of, at a bare minimum, trying to understand why they're there in the first place.
Right. Yeah,
or that should be part of the process is, okay, how do I feel about this thing and who put it there and why? Right?
I love that. Yeah, totally.
So yeah, I just want to temper that a bit, because it's easy to run wild with that idea and be like, well, burn it all down. And like, no.
Right. Which if you're spending time with yourself and finding the truth of yourself, you will not find that to be the case.
I'd like to think so. Just want to caution against that.
It's true.
So yeah, but awesome. That's really powerful stuff. And we've reached the final question.
Dun dun.
What's it going to be? Who knows? So this is more of a kind of promo area where I want to ask you if there's any things that you would like to bring to our audience's attention.
Well, we talked about the albums, so there's that. Definitely check out the music if you feel like you want to know more about medicine music and in a way that's tangible and easy to digest. I definitely check out the music. Which at the time that we're recording this, it's not out yet, but I imagine that it might be out by the time that this is posted. So just going online and typing in Maite Kuyasin, MAITE space KUYASIN. And you'll find it there. And then that's also where you'll probably find everything. The website that has, my one-on-one work, my retreats that I host. I host women's retreats, which are super fun and really expansive and totally empowering. And I'm saying that because I've received these things from the retreat, and then the different events that I put on and the experiences. Also do like weekend-long co-ed retreats that are all intended for the purpose of bringing us back into the unifying power of love. Bringing us back into unity, something that Derek mentioned, like being in that room full of people and being like, oh my God, there's a total unification going on here. And so that's the energy that's brought into everything that I do is this unifying? Does this unify or does this separate? So, that's the intention, is it unification, unifying you with your truth, unifying you with your higher power, unifying everybody in the room with each other, unifying everyone in the room with the divine. And so that's all the work that I do. And then I also have an Instagram where I share a bunch of this information. And by information, I mean like talking about etheric things and then my process and like what I'm going through that will hopefully help and inspire other people to do the same thing or, in their own way. But it's all Maite Kuyasin. That's me across all the boards.
Amazing. And I can vouch for everything you just said, including following on Instagram. That for me has been inspiring as well. So yeah, this entire 2 hours has been crazy inspiring too. So thank you so much for doing this. And I can't wait to hear what everyone else gets out of this as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been really, really great to talk about this. I love talking about this stuff. I could talk about it ever and ever. So thanks for giving me a space to do that and for it to be heard. Appreciate it. And for doing the work that you're doing to help people feel guided towards what actually matters in life. It's important work. Thank you.
My pleasure. And with